Happy Friday, everybody, and I just realized I forgot to take those off, and I'm not going to be able to see anything on my screen if I'm wearing my glasses. They are just for distance anymore. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different today. We are going to have tea, and we're going to close those doors. I want to talk to you about tradition and things that just shouldn't be messed with, things that are very special to me, and I am going to introduce you to one of my very favorite possessions in my kitchen. This was a gift from somebody who is very special to me, and I'm going to tell you about that in just a little bit. But before we go there, I want to talk to you about fasting, intermittent fasting. And I've got to tell you, the reason that we're going to discuss this today is because the last little while I've been struggling with that. Yes, me. I've been struggling with that. So I am the teacher and I'm struggling. So how is that a thing? Nobody that teaches you anything is perfect. Don't expect yourself to be perfect. Expect yourself to be the best version of you that you can be in that moment, in that hour, in that day. And as long as you're doing the best that you can, you need to be okay with that. Now, maybe the best that you can be in that moment is not going to be the best you can be in the next moment or the moment before. But do your best. And above all else, be kind. Usually when we're talking about being kind, we're talking about being kind to someone else. But today, I want to talk about being kind to yourself. Now, hi, Dell. If you are joining me from Facebook and this video gets wonky, jump on over to YouTube or Twitch as far as that goes and look for This Shining Life, and you will find me live there at the same time. Now, today we are going to have tea. And I'm going to tell you a story about a very gracious Scottish lady. And that is how we are going to start this off. And I want you to think about her when you're thinking about being kind to other people or to yourself. So when my husband and I got married, one of the things that I was fortunate enough to have come into my life was a very special family member, his grandmother. And when I met her, she was in her late 80s, I believe, early 90s maybe. Late 80s, I would say, yeah. At any rate, we lived in the small town where my husband grew up, and she would come to our house on occasion for tea, and I would go to her house more often. And every time she came to our house for tea, the same thing would happen. I would put a teacup in front of her, and when the water was ready for tea, I would go and I would get a tea bag, black tea, whatever kind we were having that particular day. And I wasn't terribly particular about the brand at that point in my life. And I would pour hot water, boiling water, on the tea bag, and then with a teaspoon, I would mush it up and stir it all around until it was what I thought was dark enough. And then I would take the tea bag out and dispose of that and serve this lovely Scottish lady a cup of tea. She never, ever said a word. Never said a word. And then one day I was at her house for tea, and she had the water in the kettle boiling, and she had the teapot sitting on the counter. And I said to her, I'll make the tea for you, Grandma. And she said, oh, that would be lovely. And so I took the teapot that she had sitting on the counter, and I took the lid off of it, and I took 2 tea bags, and I threw them in the pot. And at that point, she stopped me. And she said, oh, no, dear. Let me show you. So gently. Let me show you how it's done. And she took the 2 tea bags out of the teapot, and she set them aside, and she took some boiling water Now this is the proper Scottish way to make tea, and I really hope that you remember this and appreciate this story. She poured some hot water in the teapot, and she got that teapot good and hot. And she said, this is important. You have to do this. And when the teapot was too hot to touch, now let me grab something to dispose of this in. When the teapot was too hot to touch, and it was thoroughly warmed, she got rid of that water, and she filled the teapot with water out of the tea kettle. Now we're going to be using a little bit more here today, so I have a big pot of water boiling. And when she got the teapot as full as she wanted it, she laid the 2 tea bags on top of the water, and she said, that's how you put the tea in the pot, and you put the lid on, and you leave it for exactly 4 minutes. Not 5, not 3, not 4.5, 4 minutes. And I'll tell you, that lady did not even need to watch the clock to know when those 4 minutes were up. Alexa, set a timer for 4 minutes.
4 minutes, starting now.
Okay, so at the end of that lesson, when she taught me how to make tea the proper way, the proper Scottish way.
I don't have an answer for that.
Alexa, stop. When she was done teaching me how to make tea in her teapot, this lady who had collected teapots for decades, and she had shelves up on her wall that had her teapots up on the shelves for display. She went over to the shelf that was closest to where we were, and she reached up on that shelf and she brought down this teapot. Now at that point I didn't even own a teapot, which was part of the reason why she kept getting tea in a cup, but it likely would have happened anyway. She brought this teapot down out of her prized possession, and she gave it to me, and she said, this is for you, so you'll be able to make tea at home. One of the most beautiful gifts that I have been given. The teapot was incredibly special, but the gift of knowledge was so amazing, and the gift of kindness. Not one time did she ever say anything about how I made tea at my house. Not once. And even at her house, she was very gentle about it. And I'm sharing this with you today because I want you to remember when someone is talking to you about anything, but usually when we get together, we're specifically talking about keto. And when someone says, well, I can't do keto because, or you shouldn't be doing keto because, or whatever it is they're trying to share with you, be gentle with them. Or if they are eating a lot of carbs and you have a better way, or you hung out with me and learned a different way that's low carb, be gentle. Invite them for a meal, invite them for a cup of tea, and show them. You don't have to be critical or judgmental. You need to be kind, the same way that Grandma McPherson was kind to me. Okay, now, this tea is not ready yet, but I do want to talk to you about some different kinds of tea, and this is just, the tea that I put in here is an orange pekoe tea, but there are so many different kinds, and as much as I love orange pekoe, it does have quite a lot of caffeine in it. So if you are drinking tea in the afternoon, you may want to think about having a herbal tea. Now here's the thing with herbal tea. Herbal tea is very much different. If we brew this orange pekoe tea for too long, it's going to become bitter. If we don't steep it long enough, it's going to be, I'm going to give you another Grandma McPherson-ism. If the tea is too weak, she would say it looks like spider pea. Not really sure where that came from, but it isn't something that any of us that have ever heard it have ever forgotten. And my husband and all of his cousins and our children and all of their cousins all know exactly what spider pea is, and it only ever happens when you're making tea, to the best of my knowledge. Okay, so when you're making a herbal tea, it's important that you steep that tea or simmer that tea for a very long time, and I'll tell you why. If you're doing, now I want to show you, this is one of my favorites, and I know I've showed you this one before. This is one of the Tetley Boost teas, and this specific one is peach, ginger, and dandelion. And each of these Boost teas have got, let me get that to focus in on this. Is it going to focus for us? Maybe not. Okay. Oh, there we go. Alexa, stop. Now this is a perfect cup of tea. And it will never be bitter if you steep it for 4 minutes. And it will never be spider pea. It will be the perfect cup of tea, according to my husband's grandmother. Now, this particular cup of tea, I don't want a strong flavor in it just because I'm honoring Grandma right now. So I'm going to put a little bit of vanilla in. Now, the Da Vinci sugar-free syrups, you can get just a sweetening syrup that has no flavor, which would have been honoring her even more. But I'm going to have a little bit of vanilla in this tea and just dress it up a little bit. Now, when you are fasting, and this is why we're talking about tea today, when you are fasting, your mouth gets lonely. And I know that sounds crazy. But when you think about being hungry, I want you to think about two things. Think about nutrition and think about whether or not you need that nutrition. Because oftentimes, most often in our society, rarely is there ever a time when a person is truly hungry. We are fed far too well. So if we're not hungry, what are we? Our mouth is bored. We inundate our taste buds with flavors all the time, and they're intense flavor. They're intensified by sugar, they're intensified by salt, they're intensified by chemicals that are added to processed food, chemicals like MSG and all of the things that you can't pronounce. And so our mouth gets all excited when we have these amazing flavors. Oh, and that is absolutely an amazing flavor. So, many thanks to Grandma McPherson for teaching me how to make that, and to our kids. She was great, Grandma Mac. When you are steeping a herbal teas are different because herbal teas are made with whole pieces of fruit. So this is anise, star anise, whole star anise. Sometimes maybe slices of ginger. So this is this Shining Life ginger. This Shining Life also has organic lemon peel. So everything that I'm showing you now is part of my spice line. Cinnamon sticks. This is a crushed cinnamon stick. Whole allspice. You can use all of these things together and crush them up to make yourself an amazing herbal tea. But one way or the other, when you buy herbal teas, it's ingredients like that are chopped fairly fine, but they are still not a black tea, and black tea releases its flavor very quickly. That's why we only have to steep it for 4 minutes. Because there are healing properties in all of the things that we find in herbal tea, such as peach and ginger and dandelion. This one is a green tea. This sunshine tea is lemon and orange with vitamin D, so it's lemon peel and orange peel with vitamin D. And then this one is Immune Plus, and it has peppermint, ginger, and zinc, and vitamin D. All of those things, in order to pull them out of the bits of peel, the bits of fruit, the bits of whatever it is that's in that specific blend, it takes time. And if you want to pull out all of the essential oils that are in there, that takes even longer. So how long do you steep a cup of herbal tea? Well, I'm going to tell you that today I am going to make a pot of peach, ginger, and dandelion tea. I'm going to add 3 tea bags to the pot of water that I had on the stove. And I am going to let this steep all day. The longer it steeps, the more you get out of it. The longer it steeps, the more oils and vitamins and goodness you get out of it. And you can change that flavor. You can change it however you want. If you want to add something that is a little bit extra, we can do that too. So we have maybe 1.5 liters of water in here. We can add a teaspoon of lemon. We can add cloves. We can add ginger. We can add additional ginger. This already has ginger in it, but if we want a little bit additional ginger, oops, TSL Organics ginger, add to the pot. The longer we steep it, the more fragrant it's going to get, and the more fragrant it gets, the more we're getting out of that tea. Now, where did I drop? There we go. Set that teaspoon aside. And so if we were to leave this black tea in the teapot steeping past the 4-minute mark, which I very unintentionally have just done because I did not take the tea bags out, the tea would get a little bit bitter. And it wouldn't be nearly as lovely as the first cup of tea that we poured. Now, come on. Getting that tea bag out of there, you might want to use a little pincher. But there. Hopefully I haven't left it too terribly long. And so now that I've gotten those tea bags out, I'm going to put the lid right back on and just let this sit there until we're ready for another cup of tea. Now, something else that I want to show you, possibly. I thought I had it here. And again, she walks away from the camera because she forgot to bring something that she needed. Now, when you have made that perfect cup of tea and you don't want it to get cold because we don't want to have to reheat it, that's going to make it bitter as well. This is a Dutch tea cozy. And I love this tea cozy. It is amazing. And when you take a pot of tea and you put it in the tea cozy, and you can see inside there's all kinds of padding in there, and we're just going to lock it up. I can come back in an hour or more, and that tea is going to be beautiful and hot and just as good as it was when I made it, as long as I remember to take those tea bags out. Now, when we go back and look at the tea that I put in the pot with the additional lemon peel and with the additional ginger root that we've got in here, you can see that the water is starting to turn color, and it's got a little bit of that peach color coming out in it. And the longer we leave that in there, the longer or the more intense the flavor is going to become, but it is never ever going to become bitter. It's just going to become more beautiful. So don't be scared to make a pot of tea and leave it simmering for half an hour. And then put it away with everything in it and use it as you need it and heat it up as you need it. Now, I know we started this out by talking about intermittent fasting. So what's the big deal? When you are trying to fast and your mouth gets bored, it needs flavor. If you can make something like this that has flavor in it, and then intensify that flavor to get your mouth a little bit excited, and I will show you my favorite way to intensify that flavor is with citric acid. Citric acid is one of those things that just makes flavors pop, and it does it without doing damage to us. So in this particular pot of tea, when I pour a cup this size, I am going to add a wee little bit of Da Vinci sugar-free peach syrup and about 1/4 of a teaspoon, 1/8 of a teaspoon to 1/4 of a teaspoon of citric acid. I cannot imagine citric acid in black tea. Not something that I have done or that I can imagine doing. But, you know, if you do it and you like it, by all means, experiment. go online and look up recipes for chai tea. If you like chai tea, did you know that in India, pretty much every family has their own recipe for chai tea? The same as in Canada, everybody has their own recipe for chili. And there isn't one that's right or wrong, there's just that recipe that belongs to your family. And when you have a recipe that belongs to your family, that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside, if it is something that is low carb, then by all means, use that recipe. If it's something that isn't low carb, let's try and keto that recipe so that we can still enjoy it and still have our sweetener in our tea, whatever it is that you're wanting to make your mouth happy when you're fasting, when you're doing that intermittent fasting. And if you do that with flavor, you're not nearly as likely to be tempted. So, here is my challenge for all of us. Now, this is Friday, just afternoon, and we'll get together again Sunday morning. Let's see if we can't do, what would that be? If we get together Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, that would be about a 46-hour fast. Let's see if we can't do that. Now, you don't want to do a 46-hour fast? Do a 24-hour fast. Or 36 hours. 24 hours, 18 hours. Fasting, intermittent fasting, is choosing one window of time during a day to eat. Now, that might be an 8-hour window when you first start. It might be a 6-hour window. If you can get it down to a 4-hour window, that's even better. So, from now until Sunday morning, 46 hours. Well, 46, it'll be 46 hours. It'll be about 10:30 before we're having anything extra. And in that time, make some tea. Make different flavors of tea. Have it iced. Have it hot. Do whatever it is that you need to do. Add a little bit of citric acid. When you're adding things to herbal tea, like lemon peel and lemon, that's not going to add any carbs. You can drink this and absolutely enjoy every minute of it. Leave it on the stove for half an hour even, and let it steep and simmer and become the flavor that you need it to be. You can keep doing a taste test to it to see if you need to add anything else. And if you do that, it should make your journey through your intermittent fasting a little bit easier and help you get to that time where you are going to have your one meal of the day and maybe even a little bit of dessert afterwards. So from now until Sunday morning at 10 a.m., and I really hope that you will join me Sunday morning and tell me how your fast went. Did you do an 18-hour fast? 24, 36, 46? Tell me how your fast went. Or maybe you chose not to fast at all. Anything that you decide to do for you is okay, and I want you to be okay with it. I want you to be kind to yourself. Because if you're not, if you're busy figuring out why you screwed up, why you cheated, why you couldn't do what everybody else is doing, while you're beating yourself up, you're not focusing on what you did right. So, the plan is to do a 46-hour fast. If you don't make it to 46 hours, you only made it to 36, celebrate that. If you only make it to 24 or 18, celebrate what you do. That's it. That's all. Celebrate what you do. And on Sunday morning, which will be February 27th, 2022, join me and tell me how it went. And I will see you then, and I am very grateful that you joined me today, and I hope that you are living the very best version of your life that you can live, and I will see you Sunday morning.